Aye.
Anybody online opposed, please say no. That motion is carried. Approval of the minutes, April 26, 2022. We have the minutes for the April 26, 2022 meeting of the committee. Are there any errors or omissions to note? If not, would a member move? Thank you, Emily Goring. Moved that the minutes of the April 26, 2022 meeting of the Standing Committee on Alberta's Economic Future be adopted as circulated in the room. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those in the room opposed, please say no. Online, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Online, anyone opposed, please say no. That motion is carried. Deliberations and recommendations. Honourable members, the committee commenced deliberations as part of its review of the Lobbyist Act on March 30th, 2022 and continued on April 26th, 2022. I would remind members also that the notice requirements in the Standing Order 52.041 are in effect for this meeting in accordance with the memorandum sent to members on February 24th, 2022. In addition, members will recall that at its first meeting on September 13th, 2021, the committee invited the Ethics Commissioner and officials from the Ministry of Justice and Solicitor General to attend meetings of the committee and to participate when requested to provide technical expertise. Today, Mr. Josh DeGroot, Lobbyist, Registrar and General Counsel, and Ms. Joan Neatby, Barrister and Solicitor for the Ministry of Justice and Solicitor General are here should the committee ask them to participate in the proceedings. Good evening. At this time, I would open the floor to any discussion motions that members may wish to bring. And appropriate to continue where we were from last meeting, I will go directly to MLA Barnes.
Thank you, Chair Newdorf. I appreciate it, and thanks to everybody for your time here tonight. I'd like to start with main motion 13, and I will read it and I'll explain my rationale, please. I move that the Standing Committee on Alberta's Economic Future recommend that the Lobbyist Act be amended to prohibit a public office holder from registering as a consultant lobbyist or organizational lobbyist for a period of time immediately following the day they cease to hold public office in accordance with the existing prohibitions in the Conflicts of Interest Act. That's the end of the motion. I'd like to move in, Mr. Chair, a little bit of the logic. You recall from that September 21st meeting and other times, the Ethics Commissioner gave us advice that she would like to see some alignment between the Conflict of Interest Act and the Lobbyist Act, that there's some uncertainty in a gray area when elected officials and government employees and government subcontractors move from under the Conflicts of Interest Act to the Lobbyist Act. So I will also point out that we had several submissions suggest that a waiting period for political appointees and staffers who wish to become lobbyists, there be some kind of longer or some kind of in effect cooling off period. One of the suggestions I recall suggests that any government employee or member of the governing party wait 3 years after leaving government to begin work as a lobbyist. That was from Harding. Other suggestions for 4 years is an appropriate waiting period. I actually think that was from MLA Fry, that four years be considered. I'm sorry if it wasn't. Others suggest a cooling off period of 5 years, and I have the names Vander Veen, Gamble, and Fournier suggested that to us. Another submission suggests that a government agent who has served in executive capacity with a for-profit entity and the government within the previous 10 years should be permitted for that cooling off period to lobby the Alberta government. So again, on a recommendation from the Ethics Commissioner for the strongest possible way to protect taxpayers' dollars, for the best way to increase transparency for how government spends hard-earned tax dollars, I'd like to make this motion, which of course is really direction to the Department of Justice and the Solicitor General to come up with the proper means to align the Conflicts of Interest Act and the Lobbyist Act with a proper cooling off period. And Mr. Chair, I'll just remind you in closing that former Prime Minister Harper was big on asking for cooling off periods, asking for some protection for the taxpayer for tax dollars between lobbyists and where their money's spent. So I would ask all my colleagues to please support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, MLA Barnes. Just for clarification, in my reading of it, you are not suggesting a specific period of time, you're just saying a period of time yet to be determined for.
That is correct. I understand and believe that the Conflicts of Interest Act is 1 year, but there was a lot of submissions for longer than 1 year, 3, 4, 5, and even one at 10. So let's not tie the hands of Solicitor General and the Justice Department. Let's give the legislature, all 87 members, a chance to really strengthen the cooling off period and protection for taxpayer dollars, and let's see where their final legal part comes out. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now open the floor for discussion. Are there any members wishing to speak? Online, any members wishing to speak? Seeing none, we have a motion moved by MLA Barnes. In the room, all of those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say no. No. Online, those in favor, please say aye. Online, those opposed, please say no.
No.
In my opinion, that motion is defeated. Emily Barnes, your next motion.
Okay, thank you. Main motion ID, this one's number 7 from the website. Okay, thank you. I will move that the Standing Committee on Alberta's Economic Future recommend that the Lobbyist Act be amended to A, reduce the annual number of hours spent lobbying before a person is considered to be an organizational lobbyist from 50 to 20. B, include time spent lobbying and preparing to lobby and determining if a person has spent the required annual numbers of hours to be considered an organizational lobbyist. And C, prohibit the practice in which an organization engages an external consultant to prepare the organization's lobbying activities for the purpose of minimizing the number of hours spent lobbying by that organization. So the real key here, Mr. Chair, is more transparency, more accountability. In regards to C, it was mentioned again by the Ethics Commissioner that sometimes a lobbyist group will hire an outside organizational lobbyist and it won't count in the hours. And of course, direct lobbying or not, again, I think it's important to shed some sunlight on this. And for the organization doing it, they certainly have to review the objectives. They have to review the success of the objectives and probably pay a bill. So I think this would I don't think it would be a big extra onus on anybody's paperwork. And I think, we need to err. And it's not an error, but we need to guard on the side of more transparency and more accountability. This is to really close a loophole in our Lobbyist Act, where an organization engages an outside consultant to do all the prep for their in-house lobbying. The outside consultant's preparation time is not counted towards the organization's threshold, and the organization might not meet that threshold through the lobbying time. So again, let's tighten this up. They can still do it. They just have to count for it, and they have to show the taxpayer. They have to show the Alberta citizen. They have to show other government members where the time and effort is being spent. So with that, I would ask everyone to please approve this motion.
Thank you, MLA Barnes. We will now go to discussion. I have seen MLA Goring would like to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the honourable member for this motion. We supported the previous reduction, and we were proud to have implemented it. My colleague, MLA Billis, spoke to this in a previous amendment about striking a balance on this. And we believe that from what we heard from the invited stakeholders, that the current threshold does that at this time. So with that, I will be opposing your motion. Thank you.
Thank you. MLA Fry?
Yes, MLA Goring and I are in agreement on this. I feel like this would also disproportionately affect small organizations. Smaller organizations might have to spend more time because they don't have as many people who can go out and do the same thing. So and I also note that there's multiple stakeholders who actually want their 100-hour threshold back, and other provinces have higher thresholds. So right now, I actually think in Alberta we do have the right balance. So and I actually really appreciate that, because I think that it's of course important to strike a balance between too much and not enough. So for that reason, I will be voting against this motion.
Thank you. Emily Barnes, would you like to respond?
Yeah, well, no, thank you. I know it's a great concern between, the best efforts for every dollar spent by every Albertan. But I think that this committee, that this legislature, that this government is best to err on the side of more transparency for the Alberta citizen, more protection for taxpayers. And, there's a principle in business, of course, that you can't manage something unless you measure it. So by asking organizations to do a bit more measuring will only help their management, their effectiveness, and their ability to get value for their time and effort anyway. So I, for one, prefer to err on the side of transparency and taxpayer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to speak? Seeing none, I will call the question. In the room, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. In the room, all those opposed, please say no. No. Online, those in favor, please say aye. Online, those opposed, please say no.
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 In my opinion, that motion is defeated. Next motion, Emily Barnes.
Okay, thank you again, Mr. Chair. Main motion ID is number 8 this time. I will move that the Standing Committee on Alberta's Economic Future recommend that the Lobbyist Act be amended as follows. A, to require a return filed by a designated filer to identify any gifts, favors, or other benefits that A, number 1, a public office holder is permitted to accept, and number 2, to the knowledge of the designated filer, after reasonable inquiry, were offered to a public office holder within the last 12 months by the consultant lobbyist or organizational lobbyist for which the return is being filed. And B, require disclosure of the following particulars with respect to each gift, favor, or other benefit referred to in Clause A. Number 1 under B, a description of the particular gift, favor, or benefit. 2, a description of the circumstances in which the gift, favor, or other benefit was offered. 3, the actual value of the gift, favor, or other benefit. 4, the name and title of the public office holder to whom the gift, favor, or other benefit was offered. 5, the date that the gift, favor, or other benefit was offered. And 6, a statement with respect to whether the public office holder accepted the gift, favor, or other benefit. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's the motion, and some of my supporting ideas and logic is that the Act does not do enough to promote public transparency and accountability about gifts, favors, or benefits from lobbyists to public office holders. It does not do enough to facilitate enforcement of Section 6.2, prohibited gifts, as mentioned again by the Ethics Commissioner on page 14 of her report. Schedules 1 and 2 of the Act do not include a disclosure requirement to enhance compliance, transparency, and accountability with respect to Section 6.2, prohibited gifts. So again, I just think for the Albertan sitting at home in his chair who looks at the registry, it would be nice to see more as to the value and the purpose of the flow of gifts and favors, whether they were accepted or not. It helps Albertans understand the direction of where people want their tax dollars to go to, and it helps Albertans decide where they want to get involved. So again, in an effort to enhance transparency and disclosure, I would ask all my colleagues here tonight to please support this motion.
We will open this for discussion. Any members wishing to speak? Online, any members wishing to speak? Mr. Van Dyken.
Yeah, I guess when I look at this motion, it looks to me like a lot of increased filing, increased paperwork, and I'm not sure that there's any real gain to be an advantage here. I understand the intent in the heart of the motion, but we already require our elected representatives, I know for myself, that to report any gifts, and I'm just failing to see where we're actually going to get an extra advantage here to improve accountability.
Thank you, Mr. Van Dyken. Mr. Barnes, do you care to respond?
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, you know, thanks to everybody for the time and effort in this, and you know, there's a lot of stuff to plow through, but public office holder is defined different in both the Lobbying Act and the Conflict of Interest Act, so it's more than just elected officials. And MLA Van Dyken, you started that with I'm unsure that it's going to do what's stated. But I also, you know, it's an age-old saying that transparency and sunlight improves things. So I'm sure that more transparency and more sunlight will provide for better protection for hard-earned tax dollars. And as important or more important, it will allow Albertans to get more involved in their government. It will allow Albertans to know more about where our culture and society is headed. And that's why I ask you to support it, please.
Any others wishing to speak? Emily?
Just in response, you know, so I'm not aware of what others might be receiving, completely oblivious to that. But I recognize that. So for me, not exposed to this really at all out in rural Alberta. One thing that comes to mind is I was at an event. It was a consultative event in a community, and it was the culture, because you mentioned the culture of that community to pass on a gift to myself. So it was a coffee mug, but are we then requiring that cultural community to be in filing for that type of a social gift, a cultural gift to anyone? I don't know, like where does it begin, where does it end? That's the trying to figure out what's the right balance, and I think the balance is there. I'm trying to scroll through cross-jurisdictional as to what other jurisdictions are doing, and I'm not finding anything that would address that we're out of line with cross-jurisdictional.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate that's legitimate concern, but there are thresholds for the value of the gift, and again, because this is just a motion to Justice and Solicitor General and then on to the legislature, I don't think we have to be exactly precise here. We just have to, you know, put forward the desire for more accountability and more transparency.
Thank you. Anyone online wishing to speak to this motion? Seeing no others, I will call the question. All those in favor of this motion in the room, please say aye. Aye. In the room, any opposed, please say no. No. Online, those in favor, please say aye. Online, those opposed, please say no.
No.
In my opinion, that motion is defeated. Next motion, Emily Barnes.
Thank you again, Chair Newdorf. Main motion number 9 from the what we submitted on the website. I will move that the Standing Committee on Alberta's Economic Future recommend that the Lobbyist Act be amended for the purpose of calculating the time spent lobbying to include any time spent arranging a meeting between a public office holder and a client of a consultant lobbyist or organizational lobbyist. Again, from the Ethics Commissioner's, her office's report on page 34B6, there's potential uncertainty in the Act as to whether arranging a meeting on behalf of a client between a public office holder and a consultant lobbyist alone is lobbying for the consultant lobbyist. This may create confusion for lobbyists that may affect their compliance. It also creates a possible gap in the Act. Well, a possible gap in the Act doesn't sound like a good thing to me. I think it's good for everybody to end uncertainty, and I don't know, arranging the actual meeting sounds to me like it could be the heart of the lobbying. So I think very, very much for that reason it should be included. And again, we're making a motion to the legislature, to the Solicitor General and Justice to strengthen this. And I think this is a good step. This is a good way for this committee to indicate that we want more transparency and accountability. Thank you.
Thank you, MLA Barnes. Any wishing to speak to this motion? Online, any wishing to speak? Seeing none, I'm prepared to call the question. In the room, all those in favor of this motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. Online, those in favor, please say aye. Online, those opposed, please say no.
No.
In my opinion, this motion is defeated. Next motion, Emily Barnes.
Thanks again, Chair. We'll move on to main motion 10. I move that the Standing Committee on Alberta's Economic Future recommend that the Lobbyist Act be amended in the case of an organization lobbyist return to include the following. A, the name and business address of each organization, group, or entity that, number 1, is affiliated, subordinate, or associated with the organization for which the return is being filed, and 2, is carrying on related lobbying activities. B, the name and business address of each organization, group, or entity that exercises a controlling relationship over the organization for which the return is being filed. Thank you. That is the motion. A little bit of discussion. The Act takes an unnecessary, inflexible, and narrow approach to the registration of collective in-house lobbying by a group of parent and subsidiary corporations. Depending on how many subsidiary corporations are at issue, one group of parent and subsidiary corporations could be required to maintain many registrations in the Act as lobby, and this way it allows them to work under their umbrella but be identified. Mr. Chair, I pulled the copy of the lobbyist registry today, and there's many groups. You know, the Chamber of Commerce's are maybe the easiest one to highlight, who may represent up to 200, 500 different members, and they may have the ability to lobby, or the desire to lobby, just for some of those groups at a time, maybe not necessarily all of them. So I think, again, to improve taxpayer protection, to improve transparency, to improve accountability, I would like to see our lobbyist registry include all the names of the organizations that they represent, even if it's a link to somewhere else where they can be found. And if an organization, say, isn't lobbying on behalf of their whole list, but minimizes the list for a particular reason, I think they should disclose that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone wishing to speak to this motion? Member Irwin.
Thank you, and thank you to the member for bringing forth this motion. And we agree, actually, with your point that it is a good amendment to ensure transparency and accountability, because we can imagine that Albertans may not know how companies and subordinates are connected. And so we're happy to support something that offers a high level of transparency and accountability.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak to this motion? Online, anybody wishing to speak? Hearing none, I will call the question. All those in the room in favor of this motion, please say aye. Aye. In this room, all those opposed, please say no. No. Online, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Online, any opposed, please say no. In my opinion, the noes have it. That is defeated. Next motion, Emily Barnes.
Thank you, Chair Newdorf. Main motion number 11. I move that the Standing Committee on Alberta's Economic Future recommend that the Lobbyist Act be amended to increase the penalty for an offense under Section 19.1, 19.2, and 19.3 to A, not less than $25,000 for a first offense, and B, not less than $100,000 for a second or subsequent offense. It's the end of the motion. Really again, taxpayer protection, transparency, accountability. And again, I think, important to have some teeth. So what I've done here is I've moved the maximum fines under the current Lobbyist Act to minimums. And again, we had several people wonder about the penalties, and we also had a submission from a Blanchard, also to prohibit the person who committed the offense for a period of not less than 2 years from lobbying. And Mr. Chair and committee members, I present that as an indication from Albertans that they think that if the act is violated, there should be penalties. And again, this is up to the ethics commissioner and up to her department. And I would like to see this important act not only have more transparency and accountability, I would like to see it have some stiffer penalties. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emily. We will now open this to discussion. I have Emily Fry and Member Irwin, so I'll start with Emily Fry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm curious as to why the language is the way that it is, and then I think it's clarified. The intention is that this is a minimum, and you see it as such. Okay, well, I'm noting that that's concerning to me, just given that this change of wording, especially that it's intentional, means that there's no limit given for the amount that fines could be. It seems like this is giving a lot of power to one office. Now, I totally agree that if somebody is breaking a law, they should be punished for that. There's absolutely no question there, and I believe that our whole caucus would agree with that. But if you are violating the Conflict of Interest Act or the Lobbyists Act, you should be fined. Now, what I am concerned about, though, is the language of this motion, and as it reads, it would give a disproportionate amount of power to the Ethics Commissioner's office, and I think that needs to be tempered. So I will, with respect to this motion, and so I will be voting against this.
Thank you. Member Irwin.
Thank you, Chair. And I think we agreed with this, perhaps the intent of it, but we're open to increasing fines, but changing maximums to minimums is a fairly significant move, and I think we would rather see amounts being increased rather than reversing maximums with minimums. And so I think we're supportive with updating the amounts for fines, but we can't, in good spirit, support this motion.
Thank you, Member. Emily Barnes to respond.
Thank you, and forgive me for not knowing this, but what's the appeal mechanism, if I could ask for? If somebody is fined under this, do they appeal to Court of Queen's Bench? Can they appeal to the legislature? What is the mechanism?
I don't know if legal counsel.
All right. I hate to not be able to answer that question off the top of my head. I don't believe it is the Ethics Commissioner that is imposing the offenses and penalties or enforcing those. I think she is responsible for the administrative penalties, but I'm again not a technical expert in this area. So in terms of the conviction of a person who is guilty of an offense under the Act, it might be, the committee may wish to seek further information from the technical experts in the room.
Thank you. We believe that Ms. Joan Meatdeby could answer that question. If the will of the committee, by show of hands, would like to have her come to the table to respond, I'm willing to do that. But if it's not necessary, as it is slightly outside the scope of the motion. So in favor of getting further advice at this time, please raise your hand. Opposed to doing that direction, please raise your hand. Defeated 3-1. So at this point in time, I would recommend that the committee remember that we have the ability, as I hear a consensus about some of the intent, that the report that the LAO will provide this committee to table in the legislature can highlight things like penalties and fees and appeal process without passing, without trying to predict the will of the committee on this motion, but they would be able to highlight that in terms of the report. Ms. Robert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to clarify that the committee would have to say that, though. They would have to say, please put that in the report. Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
that committee recommendations and highlights in the report can identify certain topics, such as this one perhaps, if it was not to be passed as a motion, but there is general agreement that possibly raising the level of the fine or addressing that area in particular could be highlighted in said report. Emily Barnes.
Could I make that recommendation?
It would be more appropriate at the time where we direct the LAO to do that report. I believe it would be more at that point in time where we could direct them to do so.
Okay.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on this motion? Online, anybody wishing to speak? Hearing and seeing none, I am prepared to call the question. In regards to this motion, in the room, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. In this room, all those opposed, please say no. No. Online, those in favor, please say aye. Online, those opposed, please say no.
No.
In my opinion, the noes have it. That motion is defeated. Final motion, if I am procedurally correct, I believe this is your final motion, Emily Barnes.
Yes, it is, and thank you again, Chair, and thanks to everybody for indulging me your time. Main motion ID number 12. I will move that the Standing Committee on Alberta's Economic Future recommend that any amendments made to the Lobbyist Act take into account the importance of public transparency with respect to the practice of lobbying. So that's the end of the motion. We had several submissions advocating and asking for increased transparency, increased understanding when it comes to respect for lobbying activities. We had some specific ones. The act should be amended to provide increased transparency with respect to lobbying activities. And I have the names Sterling, Gamble, Moreau, Boulard, Shizak, Roberts, Drediger, Smella, Bertrand, Van Brabant, Pittman, Saxby, Sumner, Epp, Macbeth, McKenzie, and Batchelor. So with many Albertans behind us, I would ask my committee members to approve this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now open it for discussion. I have Emily Goring.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the member for this motion. I have to say that I am fully in support of this motion because it speaks to the intent and the principle that all changes to the Lobbyist Act should be made in. So I fully support it.
Thank you. Any others wishing to speak to this motion? Mr. Van Dyken.
Yeah, when I look at this motion, I think to myself, well, is that not the actual, already the actual will of the Ministry of, so I guess we're putting it to word, to actually description, and I would think this is unnecessary to actually have to state this, but I'm okay with the wording of this motion, and just not sure that it's really all that necessary.
Again, our recommendations and our motions are, in my understanding, emphasis and opinion to provide it to the minister. It is still up to the ministry to do with it as the ministry wills. And so, again, recommendations and motions of this committee are distinctly that. This could be viewed as an emphasis for an intent and helps to highlight the will of the committee to the ministry in their deliberations at that point.
Just as a follow-up, I guess I need to have a little bit of an understanding as to, you talk about are we amplifying the intent by stating it as a motion made in committee as opposed to giving direction to officers in preparing their report?
This is separate. The motion is separate from the report, right? Motions are the will of the committee stated, drawn up, voted upon.
Okay.
Recommendations are part of the report. I don't know if anyone would like to comment further on that, Ms. Robert or Mr. Koenig? Mr. Koenig?
I'm happy to just maybe say a few words. So I would suggest that a motion passed by the committee is a reflection of the committee's intent. It's quite clear that the committee wished to make this specific recommendation. General commentary in the report I don't think would rise to the same level in terms of intention. So in terms of the intent of the committee and what it wishes to recommend, that would likely be reflected very strongly by a motion that was passed where the members made a determination by a vote on what they wanted to have included in that report.
Clarification.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Online, want to make the last offer? Anyone online wishing to speak to this motion? Hearing none, I'm prepared to call the question on this motion. In the room, all those in favor of this motion, please say aye. Aye. In this room, any opposed, please say no. Online, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Online, anyone opposed, please say no. There's no one left, but I can still do it. In my opinion, the ayes have it. That motion is carried and so ordered. Thank you, members. If there are no further comments or motions, I believe that would be in order. We shall now move on to a discussion of developing the committee's report to the Assembly. As members know, the method by which the committee reports its deliberations and recommendations to the Assembly is by way of a written report. The common practice is to request that the Legislative Assembly Office Research Services prepare a draft report of the committee's recommendations and other information the committee wishes to convey in relation to matters heard during its review of the Lobbyists Act. At this time, I would like to open the floor to a discussion or motion and actually have some context provided for either by Ms. Robert or Mr. Koenig on that report, because they have been here the entire time and taking notes and understanding. If they would like to provide any feedback prior to our discussion that they would wish to.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, I think you've covered it pretty well, but certainly if anybody has any questions about the structure of the report, I'd be happy to go over that with you.
Thank you. So I will now open the floor to discussion, and we do have a motion which we can draw up to the screen while we're having the discussion. Are there any members wishing to speak to the report to be prepared by the LAO? Mr. Barnes, I will ask you if you wish to emphasize a certain number of items that were contained within your motions in particular that you would like to have addressed. You can do this as a fulsome thing, or you can do it one by one. I would encourage you to be as productive with your time as possible, and if you could do it more generally, that would be helpful, but that's only a hint in my direction, not an order.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, but I'm puzzled, like all the motions were defeated except for the last one. So if I, talk, I'm still a believer in all of my motions. So do we really want to go back through all that?
No, but I would like to suggest that you could possibly say, I would like the intent of a number of my motions, in particular the addressing of the raising of fines or something of that nature, where you could highlight specific couple of items, or you could say, I would request that the intent of the motions that I carried be recognized in the report, even those motions in past, they highlighted specific areas that I'd like to address, something like of that nature.
Yeah, if I could, Mr. Chair and colleagues, like obviously coming into this meeting tonight and last meeting, I had no idea which motions were going to be accepted or rejected. And so now I have some understanding of exactly what people in this committee are thinking, I think it's appropriate that I ask for an adjournment now, and let's reconvene in a week or whatever, and let's come back with just this specific goal of starting to write the report. Let's give everyone 5, 10, or 15 minutes to talk. And I mean, it's you know, the real importance of getting things laid out in the proper manner is preparation time. And of course, I had no idea what to prepare for.
I will let Emily Goring speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you to the member for the suggestion to adjourn. However, I think that
So I think he was asking a question. And we'll do that. So Emily Goring, please proceed.
I think that, you know, the members have put in some significant work around the table, and I believe that the committee's will at this point is to move into discussion of the report. I would suggest perhaps, because you have a strong desire to ensure that your motions and such are reflected in the report, perhaps we could discuss a minority report and the acceptance of the committee to accept minority reports. Perhaps if that's something that you would be open to rather than adjourning this discussion, because I believe the majority are wanting to proceed with the discussion. But to me, a minority report would seem the best solution.
Thank you. The council was actually just saying the exact same thing, that Emily Barnes, you had previously requested, and is an option to you to request a minority report, which would capture all of those motions that were defeated. I actually ask Ms. Robert to comment on that more fully.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Basically, the minority report would be whatever you put in it. Whatever you write gets appended to the majority report and gets tabled with the report. So it's totally up to you as to what you would want to include in it.
Okay, thank you. So,
oh, right, sorry. And the minority report is not subject to the committee's approval.
I can just do
You're
it.
going to write whatever you
Yeah.
want.
Okay, so, but I still think adjournment and some proper time to prepare is important. So should I ask for an adjournment, please?
Well, if you do that, then we do have to vote on that adjournment.
Okay.
And we either adjourn or not, and then we can, if we vote to adjourn, then this meeting is adjourned and complete. If we vote against adjournment, then we continue on with the meeting with the debate. Was that a hand up, Ms. Goring? Okay. Okay, well, I thought he was still asking
No,
clarification.
I will move adjournment.
Okay,
Thank
so
you.
the motion to adjourn has been put forward. All those in favor of adjourning, please say aye. All those opposed, please say no. That motion is defeated. Thank you. So now we will go back to discussion in terms of the report. Do we have anybody willing or wishing to speak in terms of the directions to the LAO? There is a motion. Could I ask that the motion be put forward? Yes. Okay, so if there is no discussion, and online, anybody wishing to speak? Hearing none, seeing none, would somebody be willing to move that the Standing Committee on Alberta's Economic Future direct research services to prepare a draft report of the committee's review of the Lobbyist Act, including any recommendations made by the committee, and that the chair and deputy chair be authorized to approve the draft report after it has been distributed to committee members for their review? Ms. Fry. So I will now call the question. In the room, all those in favor of this motion, please say. Oh, sorry. Pardon me. I backed that up. Discussion. Emily Goring.
Thank you. So
Okay, sorry. I apologize. I'm out of order. Emily Fry, you may speak to the motion.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be super quick. I definitely want to hear what Emily Goring has to say as well. We've heard from most committee members at our last meeting significant opposition to recommendations 2A, but that's pretty much all we could agree on. So I'm hoping that this report will take that into consideration, but I do think it's really important that we take our job seriously here, and that our review of the Lobbyist Act, of course, is a very important duty. It happens routinely, but I'm glad to see that we're taking some of the time to discuss the recommendations that we had made earlier, and I know that we've all very much enjoyed this time, but I am very much looking forward to seeing the committee's report. So that is my rationale for the motion, and I will resign the rest of my time.
Thank you, Emily Fry. Emily Goring.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I think that this is a motion that can be supported, and I note that, you know, Mr. Barnes put some motions on the floor that we had support in, and they didn't pass. So knowing that, this committee will be putting forward a report. I would also just like to note that the official opposition will also be submitting a minority report. But with that, we support this motion.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Emily Barnes.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm quite concerned about this committee's work when two of us are going to have minority reports. Did we really accomplish what we were tasked to do?
I believe we have done the work that we were tasked to do. We reviewed it. We've had multiple meetings, including several more than were originally scheduled. This is the due process that has been ordered, and we follow the recommendations that have come before. So I believe that we have, but that is a matter of opinion. So if there's anyone else wishing to speak, either with regards to highlighting anything for the LAO in their report or on this motion, I will ask those online if there are any willing to speak or wishing to speak. Seeing none, I will now call the question. As it has been moved by Ms. Fry that the Standing Committee on Alberta's Economic Future Direct Research Services to prepare a draft report of the committee's review of the Lobbyist Act, including any recommendations made by the committee, and that the chair and deputy chair be authorized to approve the draft report after it has been distributed to committee members for their review. In this room, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. In this room, those opposed, please say no. No. Online, those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Online, any opposed, please say no. Hearing none, that motion is carried. Other business. Is there any other business that members wish to discuss? Seeing none in the room. Online, anybody, any other business? Seeing none. Date of the next meeting is at the call of the chair. I would now entertain a motion for adjournment. Anybody? Mr. Roswell moves that the May 3rd, 2022 meeting of the Standing Committee on Alberta's Economic Future be adjourned. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say no. Online, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say no. That motion is carried. This meeting is now adjourned. Thank you, members.